Dear Strongbad, I want to be a graduate of Crazy Go Nuts University, just like you. Please let me know how I can accomplish this goal.
After decades of growth in higher education, he says, many New England colleges and universities are struggling with a sharp downturn in college enrollment. Since 2016, more than 20 New England colleges have closed, consolidated, merged, or were acquired by another institution.
Let's not pretend we're any more sophisticated and open-minded than we really are. It's really easy to complain about education as if, we just live in this society that has this terrible unfounded prejudice. You can only earn people's respect if you have a master's degree, you have a PhD, but you and me, we're sophisticated, open-minded people. We judge one another by the content of our character. Do we? This is Astra Taylor. Astra Taylor didn't go to school at all until age 13. She was briefly in school from age 13 to age 16 when she dropped out again. Her parents philosophically rejected formal education. This is the part that's really puzzling. Taylor has taught sociology at the University of Georgia and SUNY New Paltz University. It's University of New York. How did she get that job? She didn't complete high school. She never even got a bachelor's degree in university. What qualifications could possibly have justified her teaching sociology at the University of Georgia and at another university in New York State? You think you're open-minded about these things, but you're not. Now, show business is show business. The main thing she's famous for is as a filmmaker. She made a documentary film in 2005, another in 2008, and she's now appearing in the news. She's being interviewed by TV News for a 2019 film titled What is Democracy? ? And that's why I looked into her credentials. I thought, is this somebody who studied political science or philosophy? What does she know about philosophy that she's making this film? And sometimes you ask yourself, how did this person get the financial backing to make a mainstream movie? And a movie that's very unlikely to earn money. I mean, this movie is not going to have collectible action figures. It's not really going to be a food market. And then you find out who she's married to. She's married to someone rich and famous. Okay? But that's show business. We all accept on some level or to some extent that movies get made, deals get hatched, because people know people, and people have money and connections and so on. To some extent, maybe we can accept that. But can we accept that someone who never even completed high school, someone who never even went through the exams at the end of high school, someone who never got a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a PhD, taught sociology at university? There is a crisis of education right now in 2019. And the crisis of education is not just economic. It's not just about students being bankrupted. It's not just about parents being bankrupted. It's not just about the universities themselves going out of business and closing down because they have been bankrupted. And it's not just about the wealthy and successful universities bankrupting the rest of society.
Marygrove College will close after 92 years in the city of Detroit. The college says due to financial troubles, it can't operate past the fall semester.
We interviewed Marygrove's president inside the original library built in 1905 about this bombshell decision. President Dr. Elizabeth Burns says the college made the difficult choice to close its doors after 92 years due to decline in student enrollment and persistent financial struggles.
I probably look like I've been crying because I have. The faculty and staff had seen the enrollment numbers throughout the spring and summer, so they knew that our numbers for fall were not looking good. They knew our numbers for summer were not great. and it's just, it's sort of inevitable.
Virginia Western Community College eliminating positions because of a decline in enrollment. In the 2013-14 academic year, there were more than 12,800 students, but enrollment for last year was only 10,000.
In 1967, 20% of students majored in the humanities or liberal arts. Now it's down to 5%.
We have focused on a primary revenue stream that is undergraduate traditional enrollment. We have not been able to diversify our enrollments. We rely on a very heavy 18-year-old freshman class to come in, and when those numbers don't come in, there's a spiraling effect.
We're running out of 18 to 24-year-olds, especially in New England, which has a very flat growth rate. The other thing that's happening to these institutions is that because of their cost and because of the dearth of supply, they have to provide higher levels of financial aid and discounts.
A 2017 study from the National Association of College and University Business Officers shows the average tuition is discounted by nearly 50% for first-time, full-time students.
Politically, it's convenient to pretend that the problem is cost. It's convenient and it's dangerous to pretend that the problem is cost. The problem is value. Value is harder to measure. Value is harder to fix. Right now, Bernie Sanders is the first American politician in living memory to seriously want to address what's wrong with American universities. But what he's proposing is the wrong solution. It's an irrelevant solution. He just wants to dump money on the problem to make admission cheaper. Can still have a terrible university system that still bankrupts students and parents and the nation with cheap tuition or free tuition. And to a larger extent than people want to admit, that already is the case.
Community colleges across New York State are working hard to try and stem the tide of declining enrollment on their campuses.
Statewide enrollment at these two-year schools has dropped about 20% since 2010.
It's not that long ago, Onondaga Community College had over 13,000 students taking classes at the school, its highest enrollment ever. But since that year, 2012, the school has seen less and less students almost every single school year. Last fall, it was just over 9,800 students enrolled.
Enrollment's going down. It's going down here. It's going down to 4 years. It's just there's more competition for fewer people.
It's not exclusive to OCC. Let's look at Cayuga Community College. It had just over 4,700 students back in 2010, but last fall, the enrollment was down 20% from that mark. At Jefferson Community College, just to our north, the drop 12% in that same time period. For Mohawk Valley Community College, it's an 11% decline from nearly 7,200 students in 2010 to just a shade over 6,300 that enrolled last fall. And down the thruway in the Rochester area, Monroe Community College fell 35% from nearly 19,000 students in 2010 to just over 12,000 last fall. And finally, one of the bigger drops, 57% for Tompkins Cortland Community College from fall 2010, where they had 5,500 students, to last fall, where the enrollment just under 2,400 students.
Many of my viewers just listen to the audio and don't watch what's on screen when my videos are playing. If you did that, you missed the fact that I added to the video there. I had popping up on screen the price of tuition at the community colleges that were mentioned in sequence. $4,000, $5,000. When the price is that low, it's trivial relative to the other costs that devoting years of your life to study really entail. You have to rent a new apartment. You have to buy new furniture. You have to stop living in one place and start living in another. You have to start a whole new life and become a whole different person and maybe learn a new language. The type of sacrifice and commitment being made relative to $5,000, relative to $5,000 plus student aid and a bank loan, spreading the cost out, amortizing the cost over many years. When you're talking about $5,000 tuition, cost is no longer the problem. The problem is value. And the problem of the low value of university education goes much, much deeper and much, much further than the problem of credentialing and the value of a credential.
2 colleges in New England have shut down recently. 4 more are closing their doors this month. This is an alarming number of schools going out of business, affecting thousands of students.
News Center's Chris Costa shows us how it's affecting students from Maine and why experts say this is happening.
Research firms shows New England faces a dire forecast. In the next 10 years, at least 15% fewer students will go to 4-year colleges. Fewer students to choose from means liberal arts schools will start dipping, a term that means admitting students they normally would not, or offering them more financial aid. But that phenomenon repeats itself until some schools simply start running out of students and income.
And the weak schools have nowhere to dip.
Leaving students like Tara, who just finished her sophomore year at Green Mountain, with big decisions to make.
Green Mountain College is not alone. Since 2016 in New England alone, 6 private liberal arts colleges have announced plans to close. Another 3 are merging with larger universities, and 1 more is not admitting any new students. Experts say this trend is only going to get worse.
I mean, the population of college-going students literally is going to fall off of a cliff.
Many years ago, about 10 years ago, approximately, I spoke to a university professor by email. And I just want to say I'm very often in a privileged position, partly just because I'm so old. When I talk to university professors, they often want to kind of unburden themselves and talk to me like I'm their friend, or talk to me like I'm their therapist even. Tell me about how hard their lives are as professors. And I get a little bit of an insider's view. I used to be married to a university professor, worst years of my life, but hey. I get a little bit of an insider's view, even though I'm an outsider, even though really I'm an applicant when I talk to these people. So I started talking to this professor, and he's complaining to me about how terrible the university is he works at. It's a famous university in London, England. And everything about the university is terrible, and the quality of education is terrible, and if you get the degree, it won't lead to any employment for you. There's no future, so don't do it. He tells me all this stuff, which is probably good advice. And I remember he even complained specifically that even he, as a professor, he wasn't able to use the library in between semesters. You know, it's the details that stick with you. That, you know, he even resented the way library privileges were set. Everything about this university is bad, and you know, it's just too expensive. Said to him, you think $5,000, $10,000 in tuition, you think that's what matters here? Let me tell you something. If your university were offering me a real educational opportunity, I could turn to my parents and ask them to buy me a diamond-encrusted pen and a solid gold desk to sit at and do the research to get that degree, okay? And that would be worth it. The cost of a golden desk and a diamond-encrusted pen could be justified relative to the value of that education, okay? The tuition costs you're talking about here are trivial. You know, trivial compared to what? Trivial compared to completely ending my life in Cambodia, completely ending my life in Canada, losing my home, losing all my furniture, losing all my friends. If I had a job, quitting my job, I think I did have a job at the time, quitting my job, moving to a new country, renting an apartment in London, England. Extremely expensive. The cost of rent, you know, ridiculous. And then living there and devoting my life to that area of studies for years. It's much more like the type of sacrifice you're thinking about with joining the army. You know, even if you're just going to join the army for 5 years, you're going to think about that really carefully. And the most fundamental and profound question you're going to ask yourself is, what kind of person am I going to be at the end of this? What kind of human being am I going to become? And I've applied to join the army. I thought that through. Am I going to come out of this, you know, a little bit demented? Am I going to come out of this psychologically, morally, ethically, a worse person than I am now, or a better one? Is this going to make me strong? Is this going to make me weak? Is this going to make me sophisticated? Is this going to make me cosmopolitan? Is this going to make me philosophically a better person? How am I going to come out at the other end of this? If you really believed in the value of that education, going to that university and doing that, The cost of a diamond pen and a gold desk would be nothing relative to that education you'd receive. I said to him in the email, the problem is I don't believe in the value of this education being offered at this university, and you don't either. You've just spelled out for me all these reasons why it's a terrible university and it'd be a terrible decision. As soon as I'd said that, he wrote back right away saying, oh, no. If your parents have the money, you should sign up. You should become a student here. It'd be great for you. This guy was just telling me that it's terrible in every possible way, and even that it makes his life terrible as a professor. Even he feels ripped off by the system. And as soon as you say you got the money, he's so eager to rip me off. All right? There's a lot of attention being paid to cost, and there's very little attention being paid to value.
For 185 years, this college campus in Vermont was teeming with students. Now it sits empty. In January, the school announced it would be closing. Enrollment was down, and it had to offer ever larger tuition discounts to attract students. While annual tuition was around $36,000, no one paid that price.
We were actually discounting that about 67%. So the average student was really only paying about $12,000 for tuition.
In Vermont, 3 colleges have ceased operations this year, losing roughly 1,000 students. A 4th college is on probation, and a 5th one has merged with another school in Connecticut. While this state has been particularly hard hit, the closures reflect a wider trend across the United States.
According to Moody's, in the next few years, the closure rate for nonprofit U.S. private colleges will climb to around 15 a year.
This was the list of suggested careers for the most recent university degree I enrolled in, University of Victoria, Asian Studies. Okay? And to at least 2 different professors I presented this list. I said, what do they think? Literally, not a single one of these jobs, not a single one, would I be qualified for by this degree. Like, every single one of them is a lie. And in many cases, these are jobs that require a different degree, even being offered at the same university. You know, what do you mean, legal professional? What do you mean? With a BA in Asian Studies from a Canadian university, I can be a legal professional? Really? What kind of legal professional is that? You know, what do you mean? Writer, editor, publisher. Those are all jobs I've had in the past. But I've worked as an editor, I've worked in the publishing industry and so on. Some of these are things I know about. What do you mean? Negotiator. Negotiators on this list. With my bachelor's degree in Asian Studies, I'm going to be employed as a negotiator. Some of these I looked into at that time. I actually did the research. Foreign service. Do you know what it takes to get into the Canadian Foreign Service? I do. I did the research. I looked into it. It ain't this. You are not qualified for any of these jobs. Not even one. Not even office administrator. Not even teacher. Not policy analyst. Not intelligence officer. I talked to the military about that. I actually looked into these jobs. Tourism analyst. There was a separate university in the same town giving credentials in tourism. Completely different line of work. Needs different. Not a single job. And you know, one of the professors I showed this to, he just started laughing and laughing. And he didn't really tell the story in a clear way. But he told me, you know, there was some meeting where like they had a round table meeting where they had to come up with this list of jobs. And none of them could really come up with anything. So he was laughing so much, I never really got the story, but he was allegedly at the meeting where a group of professors and university administrators had to come up with the list of jobs I would supposedly be qualified for by studying at this university in Asian Studies. And you know what? I could forgive it all. I could forgive all that if this university had just done a decent job in teaching me the Chinese language. If they had just been decent and competent and caring and good, I would have paid all the thousands and thousands of dollars and devoted years of my life if they just could have taught me the language, even if everything else was bullshit, even if the credential was worthless. But they can't. The system is broken in the ways that matter most. It reminds me of an interview with an executive from an airline corporation. And the executive said, rewording this and condensing this, everyone says that they want more legroom. Everyone says they want more space between the rows of seats in the airplane. But that is the most expensive thing the airline can give you. The airline can give you free peanuts, can give you free beer, they can give you free champagne. Bottles of champagne would cost them less than increasing the space between the rows, because when they do that, the total number of seats in the airplane goes down and they lose money on every single flight for the rest of that airplane's life once those seats are installed. That's the one sacrifice they can't make. You know what the tragedy is? The most expensive thing the university can give you is exactly what we're paying them for, and that's tutoring. That's face-to-face quality time between one student and one professor, or maybe very small groups of 2 or 3 students. It's people actually helping you and teaching you, not lecturing you. Not one professor at a podium in front of a crowd of 200 students. That's profitable. They can make a lot of money. You got 200 students in the room. They're all paying thousands of dollars. And then just one professor stands there with a projector and gives this performance. It's a high profit industry, okay? But one-on-one teaching, which is what learning the Chinese language especially really requires. Learning the Chinese language you can't just do studying alone at the library. You need help. You need direct interaction. And what you're paying for at a university is exactly the one thing that the internet can't give you, that the library can't give you, that working alone with computers and textbooks and pen and paper can't do for you. Okay? It's exactly that tutelage. What is the value of education? How would we measure value apart from price, apart from the earnings potential of the degree, apart from credentialization, the value of the credential in that sense? I don't think anyone today expects a student to be a refined or well-educated or sophisticated person after they complete a bachelor's degree. I don't think there's any expectation of that culture. I don't think anyone says, oh, well, you've been to university, so you know these things. So you're just well-educated and familiar with anything in general. People of all ages, not just young people, because people go to university in their 20s, 30s, 40s. People go back to university at any age, partly because it is so expensive. People do not come back from university with a refined or sophisticated outlook on life. I don't think anyone really feels that spending 5 years in university is going to change you profoundly for the better, not even compared to 5 years in the military. In many ways, all that university now does is give you a membership card for the library and a cubicle for you to sit down in to work alone, back and forth from the library, back and forth from the lecture. And apart from the question of whether or not university graduates are employable, it's an important question in its way. There really is a question of, is the university experience making these into better people? At any price, I think we all know right now that the answer is no.
Remember, at Crazy Go Nuts University, the future is you. Probably.